Hello everybody! Today we are going to be doing another review. So if you have not seen my reviews before, I split them up into two sections, spoiler free and spoiler. Let's jump right into the spoiler free section as we discuss today's book we're reviewing, P.S. I Like You by Casey West. This book is a YA romance. So the reason why I read this book this month is because I've been looking to broaden my horizons. I have not read a standalone YA this month, well, this year, I should say, and I thought it was time to broaden that horizon and give one of them a go. I was recommended by a very trusty source that if you're going to read a romance, pick up Casey West. So what did I think of this book? In my spoiler-free section, I give you 3 spoiler-free pros and 3 spoiler-free cons about the book. So let's jump right in with our 3 spoiler-free cons about P.S. I Like You in order to help you determine if this is the right book for you. Spoiler-free con number 1 is the premise of this book. The reason that this is a con is because I don't believe that the premise fully encapsulates the book in the best way that it possibly can. So therefore, I'm going to now dive into my version of how I would how I would write a premise for this book. This book follows Lily, who is a songwriter who is currently at high school. One day, while bored in chemistry class, Lily writes some song lyrics on a table, only to find out that someone else has added to these lyrics in her next class. This eventually leads to letters being written back and forth between Lily and an unknown respondent. But it is important to know that this book is more than just that. The point of this book is not who the unknown respondent is. This is a book that explores the age-old adage, perception is reality. It takes that adage and shines a very heavy light on why we shouldn't judge a book by its cover, or people for who we think them to be without actually getting to know them. The actual premise of this book doesn't really go into that sort of detail. It more relies on the mystery between Lily and an anonymous responder and trying to work out who that anonymous responder is. But the thing is, we find out who the anonymous responder is halfway through the book. So this clearly shows that that is not the purpose of the book. Okay, it's a nice little fun thing that has been thrown in there, but it's certainly not the point of the book. It is my belief that the purpose of this book is that it shines a light on judging a book by its cover, perception is reality, all of those sorts of things, and actually getting to know people before you actually make a preconceived judgment on them. And Casey West does that really well. But for the sake of what the actual premise inside the book says, that's a massive con as far as I'm concerned. My second spoiler-free con about this book is the first half of this book. Yeah, I read the first half of this book and walked away from that. So I read this book over the course of 2 days. And at the end of the first day, when I got halfway, I felt too old for this book. Now, this is really, really interesting, because I'm sure there are a lot of people out there who will watch this video who will think, but Mr. Francy, this book is a YA book and you're not the targeted age range. Well, excuse me, sir, but I believe that as an adult, you can read any age range of a book and not necessarily feel like you're too old for it. Right up here, in fact. This lovely little section right up there are all of my middle grade books that I've read this year. Most of them I've at least given 4 stars to. I did not feel too old reading a middle grade, so feeling too old reading a YA, I definitely think that would have to be my second spoiler-free con. My third and final spoiler-free con about this book is its predictability. As I was saying before, when we get to about the halfway mark of this book, we find out who the anonymous responder is, and, well, I predicted it. Now, generally speaking, when I predict something in a book, I get really happy and get warm, fuzzy feelings. But I feel like I worked out who the anonymous respondent was because it was just way too obvious and, yes, way too predictable. Lily ends up having 5 suspects that she is choosing between, that it could be one of these 5 who is the respondent. And, well, here's how my list went with that. Suspect number 1. No, it's not them. Suspect number 2. No, it's not them. Suspect number 3. Yeah, I can see how the character might think that, but no, it's not them. Suspect number 4. It would be really nice if it was them, but there's not enough chaos for it to be suspect number 4. Suspect number 5. It's definitely you. Everything about this book and the way that I've come to get to know any type of a mystery, it's you. There are massive red flashing arrows pointing at you, suspect number 5. It has to be you. And then I got to the halfway mark of the book and, oh, wouldn't you know it? It was the one I thought it was all along. It was extremely predictable and I just didn't appreciate that. So, those are my 3 spoiler-free cons about this book. What are my 3 spoiler-free pros about this book? Let's find out. My first spoiler-free pro about this book, is our main character, our MC, Lily. In short, Lily is an amazing, aspirational character that is independent and has an amazing character arc. I really appreciate this anytime that I read a book that has a female protagonist, or main character, or MC, if you prefer. I really appreciate when that MC is really independent and really aspirational. I also really appreciated with this book the character arc of Lily. Where she begins from the beginning of the book to where she ends up at the end of the book, Lily does a lot of growing up. I think I can say that much. It's a book about a girl who's in high school. It's a romance. I don't think that's a spoiler. She does a lot of growing up in this book. I just appreciated everything about the character arc that our protagonist goes through. So I highly recommend, if you want to read a book that has an independently ambitious character who has an amazing character arc, pick up P.S. I Like You by Casey West. My second pro for this book is the moral of the story, dealing with perception being reality or not judging a book by its cover. So I first heard of the phrase perception is reality with the reality TV game show Survivor, where the host of the show, the US version, Jeff Probst, has said many times the perception of someone else to a person is their own reality because they don't know any better. And it is very true for most of us. If we don't know someone, then as a basic human instinct, we are going to judge them based on things that we see in them, or things we perceive about them, or things we've heard about them before we've even gotten to know them ourselves. This book shines a very harsh light on prejudging someone before you actually know who they are and just making an assumption. And you know what they say about making an assumption. I walked away really appreciating that Casey West shined a very big, bright, glaring light upon this age-old adage because, again, it teaches that we should not judge a book by its cover, but rather get to know a person before actually just labeling them and tossing them aside like a dishcloth after you have dried the dishes. So, I appreciate that Casey West not only shone a massively glaring light on this topic, but also that she wrote it in a book that would massively appeal to YA readers, especially young girls. Now, I do feel that this book can be written by read by girls and boys, men and women alike. I feel like anyone can pick up this book, but I don't know. There is a stigma, and again, it's the whole perception is reality thing, but there's a stigma that a boy can't pick up a romance book because, fill in all the blanking insults here. I really hope there are some boys who are confident enough to pick up this book and still, be confident enough in who they are to pick up this book, because we all do it. Boys, girls, men, women, we all judge people by their cover, and this book will absolutely have you walking away second guessing whether you should have judged anyone by their cover without getting to know them. And I really appreciate that Casey West took the time in a rather appealing book, especially for a YA audience, to explore this topic. My third and final spoiler-free pro for this book is character development. Reading this book, it is very clear to see that Casey West knows how to develop her characters. The two characters that we are mainly focusing on, it is very easy to see that they have compelling backstories, are strong, and that they are flawed, but you know what? It works. The character development in this book for both of these characters is extremely well fleshed out. We get to know who they are as, well, in a very well-rounded way. We get to know their backstory and the life that they've lived up to this point. We then get to see them at their highest of high. We then get to see them at their lowest of low. We get to see them play the role of the hero, we get to see them play the role of the villain. We get to see their flaws, which makes them more real. Casey West explores character development in a really, really good way. And if you are someone who appreciates character development, I highly recommend picking up this book, P.S. I Like You, by Casey West. So how did I rate this book? Well, based on level of enjoyment, I end up giving this book 4 stars. The reason for that is because I did not enjoy the first half of the book, as I said. It read a little too immature for my liking, making me feel too old. But the second half of this book more than makes up for the first half. So let me explain. I feel like the first half of the book, for me, entertainment level, was probably about 2-3 stars. But the second half of the book is probably like 7 out of 5 stars. So to average it all out, on enjoyment level for the entire book, I give it 4 stars. As to does it fit the brief? Well, yes, it reads like a YA novel. The first half of the book reads more like a younger side of the YA scale. The second half of the book reads more like an older side of the YA scale, but it definitely fits the age rating, the intended age rating, and for its audience, the intended target audience age rating. Secondly, it is a romance. Does it fit that genre? Yes, it does. And more. Some will argue that this is a romance contemporary. I would agree with that, but officially it is marketed just as a romance. But if you love contemporary work within your romance, I highly recommend you pick this up because it is more than just a romance, and I really did appreciate that. And I feel that Casey West achieved what she set out to achieve, and owing to that, as far as did it fit the brief, absolutely, a resounding 5 stars. So here's the deal, my friends. If you are not on Goodreads, then you may not be aware of this, but over on Goodreads, there are limitations when it comes to rating a book. You need to rate the book between 1 star, a book you really don't like, or to use the H word that I don't like to use, a book that you hate. Or 5 stars if you love this book and you want to reread it right away, or anything in between. Here's the problem. You can only round up to the nearest whole star. So, on Goodreads, I gave this book as a total, combining entertainment level and does it fit the brief, with 4 stars. However, officially, I'm giving this book 4.5 stars. I feel like 5 stars is too high a rating for this book, especially considering my thoughts on the first half of the book. I don't think I can give it 5 stars and feel okay with that. But at the same time, just giving it 4 stars, I feel like it's better than that. So, on Goodreads, it's 4 stars because I can't give it a half. But, in my opinion, officially, this is a 4.5 star book. It is a solid book. I recommend this book to anyone who loves contemporaries within their romance. So, I don't read a lot of romance at all. I don't remember the last time I read a romance. I really don't. So this is the first one I've read maybe in like 5, 6, 7, 8 years. But my idea of a romance is a book that literally centers around a romance. It sticks to that genre and doesn't go anywhere else. But this book reads to me more like a contemporary that just so happens to have a romance in there. Again, I go back to my star rating with the does it fit the brief? Yes, it does read like a romance, but it reads like more than a romance. It reads like a romance with contemporary elements. If you like contemporary within your romance, then I highly recommend this book for you. Also, if you're happy to get through the first half of this book knowing that it reads on the much younger side of the YA spectrum in order to see the more mature second half of this book with a higher age rating on the YA spectrum for the second half. If you're happy to get through that first half of immaturity, and if you're not the target audience, but you're happy to get through that first half of immaturity, trust me, it's worth it, because the second half of this book is amazing. I've said before with other reviews that you can cut out the first quarter or first third of a book because you just don't need it. But with this one, despite the fact that I do find the first half to be rather immature, you still need the first half because there's a lot of there's a lot of massive work that goes into the first half, especially including, but not limited to, character development and things that we need to know before we get into the second half. So you do need to read the whole book. And finally, I recommend this book to anyone who appreciates that age-old adage, don't judge a book by its cover, and also to anyone who feels like, I mean, adults do this too, but children have a way of doing this in a very unfiltered way. Anyone who knows of any children that can benefit from reading a book that shines a very glaring light on not judging a person by their appearance or by what they've heard about them. Trust me when I say, if a child reads this book, they're going to walk away really thinking hard before they next judge someone. They're gonna want to get to know that person for who they actually are. And I really appreciate Casey West doing that. Alright, so that's where we're going to leave for the spoiler-free section. We're going to head over to the spoiler section now, where I get to rant or rave about this book in a spoilery way. So I'll see you over there. But if you're not joining me for the spoiler section, then thank you very much for watching. I post videos every Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, and Sunday, and I'll see you again soon. But for those of you who are joining me for the spoiler section, let's head over there right now. So normally in the spoiler-free section, I talk about the premise of the book. I talk about the book. I talk about what the book is about in a spoilery way, but today I have too many things to talk to you guys about that we're not going to do that. So, if you're watching this spoiler-free section, I'm assuming you've read this book, and I'm going to jump right into some notes that I have regarding this book in a spoilery way. So let's talk about the predictability of the unknown respondent. Okay, so let's talk about our three main suspects. While there are 5, there are 3 main ones. The other 2 are more just like, could be you, but it's definitely not you. I mean, let's start there, actually. The fact that she has 5 possible suspects, and that 2 of them are definitely not the ones that wrote this letter. Let's put it this way. If Casey West had made it any of the final 2 suspects, the last 2 at the bottom, this probably would have been a terrible book. But then again, I've walked away from this book learning to not judge a book by its cover. So maybe it wouldn't have been. But if we're looking at what makes a book compelling, I don't think choosing either of those first 2 characters, the ones at the bottom of the list, I don't think it was going to achieve much. So her third suspect is David. So as we know, this is the guy that Isabel sets her up with. And it's clear to see from the off that she and David just aren't getting along. They're 2 different people. The only thing they have in common is Dave is in marching band and Lily likes to write songs. But that does not a couple make. So, yeah, I was pretty convinced that it wasn't David. The second suspect on the list was, of course, Lucas, the dreamy, hot, attractive guy that she's always found to be physically attractive and wants to go out on a date with, but he would never date her. And then eventually they go out on a date together and she realizes, oh, there's a lot more to him than meets the eye. He may be physically attractive, but on a date, he's in fact rather boring. I do love how Casey West didn't just explore not judging a book by its cover, 1, in a positive way, but 2, on the massive number 1 suspect. I appreciate that she did this with Dave. I also appreciate big time that she did this with Lucas. this is not to say that every single attractive guy is going to be a boring date. But I really appreciate how Lily knew nothing about Lucas. The only thing that intrigued her was that he is attractive. And that he seems to be a dark and brooding sort of character, even though I have dark and brooding characters that can rival him in other books. But anyway, I mean, Vampire Academy for one. But anyway, I guess for this book, he's dark and brooding. And yeah, all she knows about him is that he's attractive. Then she goes on a date with him and finds there's really no substance to the guy. I appreciated that. But number one on the suspect list was Cade, the bully. And to me, it was just so obvious. I felt like Casey West in the first half of this book, and part of the immaturity level, is that she went out of her way to make Cade look like an awful person. When in fact, now, let me premise what I'm about to say by saying this. I don't condone bullying in any way, shape or form. I was bullied all throughout primary school, living in Australia if you're in America, elementary school and high school, so I don't condone it in any way. Physical, verbal, what do you call it when it's online? That one. Social media bullying, whatever. I don't condone any of it. But for the sake of looking at this book in a neutral way, the bullying that Cade does to Lily is very light. He taunts her a little bit here and there. Like, I really feel, and this is one of the reasons why I think this book, the first half of the book, is really immature. I really feel, had Lily just let Cade walk past her, or if Lily had chosen to go in another direction, an opposite direction to Cade, they wouldn't even have an interaction. Cade is not a bully that I feel sets out to pursue Lily to bully her. Not at all. I just think that, I don't excuse his behaviour, but I just think that he just says things when he walks past her. It's not right. You shouldn't do it. I don't condone it. But Lily makes a really over-the-top big deal about him walking past saying something like, "Oh, I like shorts," and then just, but saying it in a way that is bullying, not saying it in a way that is, what do you call it? Verbal sexual assault. Not at all. But the fact that Lily is so over the top about it just makes it so obvious to me that if it's going to be anyone who's responding to her letters, it's going to be Cade. Because it needs to be a guy that she has some kind of conflict with. And Cade is the only one. So this is the easiest game of Guess Who ever. It's like, oh, so by the way, are you a guy and do you have glasses? Oh, you must be Paul or Eric or whatever his name is. Jum, 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 jum. Like, this was way too easy to work out. So, on predictability, I didn't enjoy it, and that's why. So let's talk more about the immaturity. I've already focused on Cade, but now let's focus on Big Sister Ashley and her dating rules that if you don't follow, you are screwed. I'll premise this by saying that I love that Lily learns by the end that this is not how things are, but at the time of reading it, I did not appreciate Casey West putting into her book these implied rules where impressionable teenagers could read this and go, oh, this is the only way a guy is going to like me. So, no, found that really immature. This is, so it's on page 89, I'm going to read it, and this is what Ashley says. If you want a romantic relationship with a guy, first, he has to find you mysterious. Then, intriguing. Then, funny. In that order. If it's in any different order, you are forever labeled, yeah. If it's in any other order, you are forever labeled a friend. I don't know who Ashley's been hanging around with, but I completely disagree with this, and the poor girls who read this book when it first came out and thought, oh my gosh, like, what's number one? He has to find you mysterious. Oh my god, this guy doesn't find me mysterious. He found me humorous first. Hey, I'm gonna be his friend. Really? Really? Oh my gosh. I mean, I feel like, okay, guys, comment below and make my point for me, okay? If you don't find a girl mysterious right off the bat, and you find another attribute about her that you love, humor, physically attractive, intelligence, whatever it is, does that mean you can't go on a date with her, or she could never potentially be your girlfriend because you didn't find her to be mysterious first? Come on, straight guys. Back me up in the comments below. For me, I mean, you know, I don't really talk about my sexuality too much on here because I don't think there's a point to it, but as far as based on this immaturity thing, I date guys, so, you know, and for me, I completely disagree with this. If I find a guy to be funny, he could still be dating potential just because I didn't find him to be mysterious first. In fact, being mysterious is not on my high quality list, but there's no order to it. There's no rhyme or reason to who you're attracted to and who you could potentially want to date. And I just found that really immature. The next thing I want to talk about is keeping it real versus plot conveniences. So there is a really integral scene that occurs in the book where Cade shows up at Lily's house for Thanksgiving. This becomes a very integral scene to the whole book. But some people may look at this and think, oh, that was a plot convenience, but I completely disagree. So, Cade is there because Wyatt invited him, because Cade is Wyatt's softball coach, and I can see it happening. I can see fun-loving Wyatt, thing one and thing two, I love that, fun-loving Wyatt saying to Cade, Coach, why don't you come to our place for Thanksgiving? I can see it. It's so genuinely legitimate that I don't find it to be a plot convenience. There are many other situations where Casey West just keeps it as real as she can in a fictional world that I do appreciate. There are other moments of immaturity like we spoke about before, but in that moment, I really did appreciate the realness of that situation and what got him there. It wasn't just a plot convenience. It felt incredibly genuine. Now let's talk about truce time. So while Cade is outside the front and he's there with Lily, and Lily is, you know, all, what are you doing here? And I don't want you here. And da-da-da-da. They very quickly come to a truce agreement. And what I love about this is that these two characters who, according to Lily, hate each other, are able to come to a truce agreement for no satisfactory reason. They just are. They're able to put their feelings aside and say, you know what, for 3 hours, we call a truce. No matter what happens, we're good for 3 hours. Then when you leave, or not 3 hours, but from the moment you enter the front door to the moment you leave the front door, we good, we friends. But the moment you leave, we go back to how things were. I love how easy this was. Oh my gosh. Can I track down some of my high school bullies and be like, you know what? While you're in my home, we're calling a truce and we friends. I love this. I thought this was really cool. The guilt trip. Okay, let's quickly talk about Jonah and the whole breaking of the guitar. Okay, so Lily, as we know, accuses Jonah of being the one who broke her guitar, and even though Jonah refuses to apologize, she knows that it's him, and she figures he'll just apologize someday, whenever he's ready. I felt so bad because I was with her. I thought Jonah did it too, and then when Wyatt admitted he did it, oh my god, I wanted to hug Jonah and apologize. I almost started crying. This is a YA romance, and I nearly started crying because I felt so guilty. Casey West did a really good job of convincing me that Jonah was the one that broke her guitar, so I just had to put that in there. Guilt trip. Well done, Casey West. Let's now talk about the genuine reaction. So when Lily finds out that it is Cade that she's actually writing to, I love how she reacted genuinely. She was upset. She was angry. She didn't want it to be Cade. Why did it have to be him out of everyone? The guy that's been torturing me. Well, I mean, she's making a mountain out of a molehill, but still. The guy that's been torturing me all throughout high school. I love this because it takes a romance from potentially being an insta-love where she goes, oh, it's Cade and I love him now, to, no, why is it him? I don't want it to be him. I'm going to stop writing to him. I really appreciated the genuineness. Cade reveals he knew all along. Oh my god. I thought the only reveal we were going to get in this book was who was the anonymous respondent, being Cade. No. The big reveal at the end of the book is that Cade knew before he even went to Lily's house for Thanksgiving that he was writing to Lily. Oh my god, this blew me away. I love this because it makes me go back through the story and think, okay, so how was he acting around her then? Okay, and it makes more sense about the truce that they were able to have because he wanted her to get to know him outside of the letters and such a great reveal. I did not expect that at all. So well done, Casey West. Ms. Sasha announcing the winner of the poetry contest. This woman, this girl, excuse me, Missy, we're going to need to have a little bit of a talk, okay? Detention for the rest of the year, if not worse, if not suspension. How dare you take someone's property and then read out private thoughts about the guy that you thought once thought was your boyfriend, because he says that he never was, but she always thought he was. How dare you invade that? It got me so incredibly angry, and yet it provoked emotion out of me in a book that I didn't think in the first half was going to. So well done to Casey West for provoking that anger out of me. And finally, that takeaway moral of perception being reality and not to judge a book by its cover. Lucas being attractive, so therefore he should be an amazing date. In reality, he's really boring on a date. Isabel won't want me dating Cade when in fact, she's totally fine with Lily dating Cade. And of course, Cade is just a bully when in fact, he's actually a really nice guy who has a massive backstory. We're going to leave that there. Highly recommend this book. Gave it 4.5 stars. I'm going to leave that there and let you go. Peace, blessings, and so much love. I post videos every Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, and Sunday, and I'll see you again soon. Thank you for watching. Like, subscribe, and comment if you would like some more content. And mwah, happy reading. Bye, guys. Bye.